Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very special webinar, Unleash with Joze Piranian, Overcoming Adversity Through the Lens of Diversity and Inclusion. Today's presentation is actually a co-presentation by the Smith Graduate Program's EDII Club and Smith Business Insights, and is supported by the Smith Blue Sky EDII project funding. Please note that closed captioning for today's webinar is available using the button that's at the bottom of your screen. My name is Meredith Dalt, and I'm a business journalist at Smith School of Business. And today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing a co-host, Erin Lin. Erin is the Vice President of EDII events for the Smith Graduate Program's EDII Club and has lots of professional experience working in the diversity and inclusion space. He's also currently finishing his Master of Management, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship degree at Smith School of Business. Erin is going to be helping me introduce our special guest and field questions. It's great to have you here, Erin. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, before we introduce Joze, I was wondering if you could briefly introduce a little bit about the Smith Graduate Program's EDII Club, just so that our audience knows what you guys do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here today, Meredith. My name is Aaron. My preferred pronoun is him/him/his. So the story of the club started with some master's students who are really passionate about the topic of diversity and inclusion. So they came together to form this club. So that's the short version of it. But like most of our students from the master program at Smith, we all have leadership capacity either outside our school life. So either in our local community or in a professional setting. So just like Queen's University, who is ranked as the #1 and #5 in Canada and international stage for social impact rankings, Go Queens by the Times Higher Education. I think a report just came out yesterday. We were so excited. Yeah, when we saw the reports. We not only want to be part of the change, we want to be leading and driving the change as well. So our club missions is to create awareness about EDI challenges and present learning opportunities. So every Smith graduate can promote diversity inclusion in whatever community they want to belong in.
That's excellent. Now, if people want to learn more about the club, are there social media handles or anything where we can learn more, or website?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just started our Instagram account, so please follow us. We run events every month. We publish our upcoming events there. So the handle is edi.smith, smith.edi club, sorry. Well, we send out this Instagram handle after our events in email communication as well.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you, Erin. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. I see people are still joining us in this webinar. This conversation will be recorded, so this entire webinar will be recorded, and everybody who signed up for it, whether you're here right now or whether you've just signed up but can't join us live, you'll be getting a recording of this conversation in your inbox, so stay tuned for that. Also, questions are a really important part of the conversation. We love having questions from the audience. We will get to questions in the latter part of today's presentation. So I would encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen if you'd like to ask a question, and we'll get to those in turn once our guest speaker is finished with his presentation. Speaking of which, Erin, I'm going to give you the distinct honor of introducing Joze Piranian.
Yeah, absolutely. Joze Piranian is a professional speaker and comedian. He's a 2-time TEDx speaker and a winner of a 2017 Inspirational Speaker Award. As a CBC Future comedian, he has performed in North America, Europe, and the Middle East. His talks about inclusion and resilience have gone viral with more than 3 million views online. Joze holds a Master of International Business from Smith School of Business at Queen's University. It's worth noting that those many accomplishments did not come as easily as for Joze, who has had confront significant adversity. Today, Joze will share his personal journey of transformation and his hard-earned insight about inclusions and the importance of being exposed to discomfort and fear as inputs of actions. Welcome, Joze.
Joze, thank you so much for being here. Erin and I are going to mute ourselves and disappear, and we'll join you back at the end of your presentation for questions. Thanks.
Thank you for the warm introduction, both Erin and Meredith. I'll start by mentioning that I have a stutter. Your internet connection is working just fine. I will share my deck, and here we go. At the count of 3, I want everyone watching this to say their first name out loud, wherever you are. 1, 2, 3. Easy, right? My whole life, I have had a severe stutter. And before learning this breathing technique to control it, the mere act of having to say my own name was terrifying. I avoided speaking every time that I could. And when I couldn't, I felt embarrassed, ashamed, and inferior. Why me? I hated myself. I hated that I had to be so different all the time. I hated that I was unable to say the words to express my thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Once at a house party as a teenager, I meet this girl and we hit it off. We start holding hands. And then she asks me, "What is your name?" Same question I asked all 400 of you. My name used to be the most difficult word for me to say. So I reply with, "Zh." And as I am struggling to tell her who I am, she lets my hand go and walks away. Was it something I didn't say? This basic act of speaking that everyone else did so effortlessly was mission impossible to me. I had enough. Something had to change. Robert Frost once said, "The best way out is through." To me, that meant the one way I could overcome the pain and the shame around being different would be by repeatedly doing the one thing that I feared the most. Speaking. First, I learned a breathing technique to control my stutter. And for the first time in my life, I felt some control over this chaotic, nightmare. Also, if anyone listening to this is called Luke, I am your father. With 400 of you here, there's at least a couple of Lukes. Then I joined Toastmasters to overcome the fear of public speaking. And trust me, it was terrifying at first. In my second year of undergrad, the fear was so devastating that I begged all of my professors to exempt me from every single presentation. In my last year, however, I joined the debating club, where I realized that what I say matters far more than how quickly I say it. In 2017, I competed and won multiple speaking competitions, something my younger self would have deemed an absurd impossibility. I then won the award of Inspirational Speaker of the Year. In 2018, I delivered a TEDx talk at Queen's in front of 500 people, which at the time was my largest audience by far. In September of 2018, I shared the stage with Arlene Dickinson at the Archangel Summit in front of 3,000 attendees. All of a sudden, 500 did not seem as daunting anymore. Over the past 3 years, I've also become a stand-up comedian. And I've since performed in 3 continents and 3 languages. Don't worry, I always start my stand-up performances by warning the audience that the performance will be full of suspense. I mentioned that I performed in 3 languages. I actually stutter in 6 different languages. I stutter in English. Je bégaye en français. Tartamudeo en español. It's as if I'm on a mission to test people's patience internationally. I am still at the beginning of my journey. And to be honest, I went through so many ups and downs. But every time that the negative emotions of my past resurfaced, I would tackle them by going outside or to the mall before the pandemic, where I would challenge myself by talking to 100 complete strangers. That exercise was tough, draining, and uncomfortable. But it was through repeatedly exposing myself to the source of my fears that I managed to overcome this. I have some footage of me doing this exercise. It was recorded by a filmmaker who is currently working on a documentary about my journey. I received the approval to share a short clip with you today, which I will play in 3, 2, 1, action.
Excuse me, guys. Hi. I have a stutter, and today I'm just challenging myself by having super quick conversations with as many people as possible as an exercise to work on my stuttering and improve my speech. I know I interrupted something that seemed very divine. Huh?
You can pull a goddess card. You have to pull a goddess card. Then I remember you from Speaker Slam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I saw you. I was like, I know that guy from Speaker Slam. I did Speaker Slam. You did it before. He won. What's
Yeah.
your name again?
I'm Joze Piranian. It's really an absurd coincidence.
Yeah. It's obviously magical.
Yeah, I could tell as soon as I.
The energy here is really good. These days are super nice.
I could tell right away, as soon as I walked in, that this isn't the average group of people. It's like hashtag Nirvana over here.
I confront my adversity one word at a time. And while my stutter is visible, yours might not be as obvious. If you have ever held back due to fear, I hate to break it to you folks, but in a way, you all have a stutter. When you are in a meeting or in class, in person or virtually, and you want to say something, and yet you remain quiet, that's your stutter. When you have a project that you've been wanting to start, a new skill you've been wanting to learn, and yet you freeze when it comes to the execution, that's your stutter. If you are reluctant to give more responsibility to an employee who deals with accessibility challenges, that's your stutter. Every time we succumb to our stutter, we shrink our destiny by stripping away countless possibilities. That time you did not speak up in a meeting or in class, you might have shared an idea that would have revolutionized a best practice at your organization or on campus. That person you did not speak with at that conference might have opened a door to a great opportunity. That employee with a disability might have excelled at that challenging or stretch assignment. When, however, we enable ourselves and others to face the fear and endure the uncomfortable, our potential grows exponentially, and we truly become the makers of our destiny. When I look back at that house party years ago through the lens of diversity and inclusion, I think about the two sides to that story. That young lady might have reacted the way that she did because she felt confused, uncomfortable, maybe even a bit afraid. Isn't this often how we as individuals tend to react to things or people who fall outside of our usual range of experiences? The question we must ask ourselves then is, what can organizations, campuses, and even societies as a whole do to prevent scenarios where we are reacting to people who are different than us with confusion, discomfort, and fear? The intuitive way to prevent people and organizations from reacting similarly with prospective hires, suppliers, clients, fellow employees who are different than us. And by different, I could refer to sexual orientation, cultural identity, gender identity, ability, mental health challenges, is of course to start by delivering sensitivity training. Awareness is a crucial part of the equation. It's how you improve the environment to enable everyone to feel seen and heard. However, if that individual is merely labeled, and if everyone else is indirectly taught to walk on eggshells whenever they are around that person, we've completely missed the mark. We might have tackled diversity, but we have ignored inclusion and belonging. While I acknowledge the crucial nature of changing the environment to make it easier for that individual, an equally significant but often overlooked approach is to directly empower the individuals themselves so that they own what makes them unique and act in spite of fear and discomfort. We don't just want to create empathetic and informed allies. We also want to create empowered and inspired individuals who will advance and grow both professionally and personally. It takes two to tango. You see, when I look back at my own journey, the successful milestones did not come from the world suddenly accepting me or from me overcoming what made me different. A lot of it came through radical self-acceptance and drastically changing my relationship with discomfort. Whereas in the past, I perceived fear as a roadblock that held me back in every way imaginable. Today, that same exact fear propels me forward into taking action. What was initially a misfortune proved to be a hidden fortune. Inclusion and belonging are not merely meant to be a marketing gimmick to make ourselves look good. No. It's an actual opportunity to turn the obstacles of the individuals into the triumphs of the group. A triumph that today might seem unlikely. The same way that any of my accomplishments along the way, my old self would have deemed absurdly impossible. Now let's move on to some practical applications. Incorporating these insights, what are some concrete, actionable tactics beyond traditional diversity training that you can start fostering in your organizations and on campus to create this energy and culture of inclusion and belonging? One, organize speed socials. Quite often, an individual will have limited interactions with the rest of their team or their peers. That isolation might be caused by the fact that this person is holding back because they are different, or maybe they deal with severe social anxiety. This can severely affect the effectiveness of the team. and it can cause endless missed opportunities for synergy. One solution for that is to organize what I call speed socials. Think speed dating, but platonically and for team building. How it works is you set aside 2 hours twice a year where the entire department or team meets in person or virtually in these times. The goal is to get every person to have a face-to-face conversation for 5 minutes with everyone else. When I run these sessions, I begin with one superficial question. It could be something like, what is your favorite type of cuisine? And then for the next question, I go a bit deeper. What is one obstacle that you are very proud about having overcome? Now, this event would have to be mandatory because the people who might want to skip it are precisely the people who would benefit from it the most. The outcomes of this exercise is to create deeper connections that go beyond the superficial labeling that we are all at times biased towards doing. These connections can result in deeper relationships and more effective collaboration, inclusion, belonging, and engagement. If the person with a disability that you had been somewhat avoiding out of fear of saying something wrong, after you do this exercise and you find out, hey, we both love the same sports team, or we're both obsessed with sushi, that is one step towards building that foundation of authentic relationship building beyond the superficial labeling. 2, employee-led awareness sessions. In addition to formal training and events where a company would book a speaker like myself to come in and speak about these things, I would also recommend managers to ask individuals within your team who might belong to different identity groups if they would be interested in sharing their experiences, their story for 5 minutes during a morning huddle. They can even add a bit of humor so that it becomes more destigmatized. Associating the familiar face of a colleague with diverse societal identities destigmatizes differences. Plus, research has shown that when others are vulnerable with us and when they show up authentically and bring their whole selves to work, we are more likely to experience positive emotions when it comes to that person, and even by extension to the group that they might represent. present. If you are concerned about vulnerability and sharing, I'll reassure you. I was having a chat about DEI with Chief People Officer at Advice Media, Lizzie Auger Dominguez, uh, about a month ago. And she said, vulnerability doesn't diminish my capacity to lead my team, it enhances it. Third best practice that can be implemented is to start a storytelling club internally. So many people hold back from speaking up in a meeting, in the elevator, on Zoom, or from taking the initiative to present internally or to clients. In my experience, working on public speaking increases confidence on stage while also enhancing your desire to connect with other human beings off stage too. This leads to finding your voice and claiming your space. And both of those things have to be weaved into the MO of any organization or campus. This can be done simply by starting a public speaking club during lunch hours once a week. The benefits are endless, and it's a great way for people to get to know one another better, which then results in working together better as a team. You are probably wondering why there is a pool on the screen. Is it because I really missed the summertime? Yes, that's one part of it. Growing up in Lebanon, we had this weird birthday tradition that I always found incredibly silly and childish. Get this. Whenever birthday parties were thrown in the nighttime in proximity of a swimming pool, all the guests would conspire to throw the birthday kid into the pool with their clothes on. Around the age of 14, I decided to celebrate my birthday with my classmates at a sports club in my neighborhood. After a pleasant dinner by the pool, the time was approaching for that dreadful tradition to unfold. Ah, what was I thinking? Having my birthday party in a location where I was going to inevitably get drenched with all of my clothes on and my shoes on. I should have known better. And then some time elapsed, and I remained drier than the Sahara. In fact, nobody was even acknowledging this tradition, as they would have done at any other birthday party by a pool. wait, why isn't anyone attempting to throw me into the pool? Throughout the year, I had witnessed time and time again this boorish and senseless tradition take place before my eyes, while a part of me was relieved to have been off the hook. A significantly larger part of me was wondering, why am I not deemed worthy of being thrown into the pool? Did all of my classmates equate my stuttering and the extreme shyness that resulted from it with oversensitivity? Did they simply assume that I must deal with enough obstacles without them having to impose upon me this form of fraternal hazing? Did they not think of me as being one of them? Then one of my closest childhood friends, sensing the bitter sweetness of my victory, yells my name out. Joze, why did no one throw you in yet? He rushes towards me, and we wrestle until my eventual descent into the pool. The water was cold. My clothes and shoes made it hard to quickly swim back up to the surface. What a stupid tradition, I thought, with a big smile on my face. You see, inclusion is not about being treated with artificial niceness by everyone all the time. Inclusion is not about people having to walk on eggshells every time that you show up out of the fear of offending you or hurting you. No. Inclusion means you get thrown into the pool too. I had mentioned that there is a movie being made about my journey. In fact, before we get to that, I'll conclude first to get some audience interaction first, and then I'll see if we also share the trailer. So to conclude the keynote portion of this session with a quote, the Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. My obstacle took me to stages all around the world. Where will your obstacle thank you? Before I hand it over to Aaron and Meredith for the Q&A, I'm told that the chat box has just been opened, so do feel free to write in the chat. I'd love to connect with you all. Do feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or on Instagram at Jose. And there's also a guide on overcoming fears that can be downloaded from my website directly. And now I'm going to hand it over to Meredith.
Hi, Jose. Thank you. We were laughing earlier about how awesome your Instagram and Facebook handles are. Yes, away, Jose. So good. So thank you so much for that talk. We've had a few questions come in. I was wondering if I could ask you to start by developing a little bit on the idea you talked about developing your own self-acceptance and really like clearly resilience is a thing you've got in spades. Can you tell us about how you were able, I mean, it's one thing to say to people, oh, you just got to develop your own self-acceptance, but that for many people is a lifelong journey. What was it that you did in order to develop that? Or what was the familial situation or something? Like, how did you do that?
Stop expecting a breakthrough would be a message I'd love to share. Quite often there's this expectation that all we need for transformation in life is one turning point. When something just clicks and then we go running under the rain as dramatic music plays in the background. I have not found that to be the case at all, Meredith. For me, the challenge of building resilience, it really came from millions of micro moments of bravery when I repeatedly did what I did not want to do. In fact, I did that so much that it changed my relationship with fear and discomfort. At some point, I really came to that conclusion that fear and action are not mutually exclusive. Fear and action can coexist. And as long as we have this mindset, we are able to enter those uncomfortable situations, conversations, and gradually build that sense of resilience, grit, and courage.
Micro moments of bravery is such a great little slogan. I feel like we should all write micro moments of bravery and stick it on our computer screen so we read it every day. I'm going to toss to Aaron now for a question.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. One thing stood up to me is when you show us the picture of the pool. So there's something you say about inclusion is sometimes about getting into the pool as well. And we can see that in social media nowadays, there's a lot of the idea of performative allyship right now, like people sharing stories and then posting black square on their social media. What are the things that we can do, you think, to encourage people to step out of the performative allyship and doing actual meaningful thing to help in the EDI space?
That is a great question, Aaron. And I would say really, we definitely need both. So as I had mentioned, it takes two to tango. On the one hand, allyship is a beautiful thing, and it is really multifaceted because, for example, I, as a person who deals with speaking disability or maybe neurodiversity to some extent, I can be an ally to all of the other identity, identity, identity groups. So it is key to also realize that we can all be allies, even if we ourselves might belong to one specific group that deals with certain challenges. And then the second thing is the empowerment piece is absolutely crucial. Because when I look back at my own journey, no amount of empathy or awareness would have sufficed as a catalyst for me to start facing the fears that perhaps had been programmed into me by society, by media, because I am different. But no amount of empathy and awareness by themselves would have sufficed had I not owned my uniqueness and repeatedly taken action, even when it felt uncomfortable. So I'll conclude that answer with, we have to be both accommodating, yet also ch- challenging others at the same time. And it's that sweet spot. So when I had gone, for example, to my teachers in undergrad, which was not at Queens, by the way, it was a different school, and I had asked them for exemptions from all presentations. Now, accepting this request is, of course, a form of uh, accommodation. In hindsight, however, was that the best thing to do to challenge me to start to fulfill my potential? And the answer is most likely no. So it's key to always remember that with growth there will be some discomfort, and we have to be comfortable with that idea.
So can I just add to that what you just said? Do you suppose then, because accommodations are very common in university now, people are accommodated in the various ways they need. Are you supposing that the prof should have said, listen, I know you're asking for an accommodation, but I'm not going to grant it to you, which would be problematic, right?
It would indeed be problematic, and I definitely embrace and endorse uh, accommodations. Now, I suppose what would have made a difference is had I felt empowered to own who I am, thanks to maybe the culture on campus, if I felt empowered to repeatedly take action, even if it was uncomfortable, perhaps through mentorship or or through having a speaker like myself come on campus and share this message, then I might have thought about these challenges a, a, a bit differently.
Got it. Thank you. Joze, the questions are coming in fast and furious now, so I'm going to give you some that are coming from the audience. This one is, I stutter myself, and one thing that has helped me a lot to rebuild my self-confidence was social media. Having communication options where I can channel my thoughts to the world without being pressured to speak verbally, and took away massive load of fear of being judged. Do you feel that having more communications options is helping people like us?
Amazing question. So amazing. The need for self-expression is universal. And when someone deals with a stutter, they end up having quite often to repress this need for self-expression. And as long as we are able, in one way or another, to express our thoughts with the world, that's definitely a step in the right direction. I definitely would not replace the use of my voice strictly with social media. However, there are so many benefits as someone who had not used his voice his whole life to get accustomed to the usage of your voice. And social media is definitely one of those avenues where that can happen. I myself, for example, love to play the guitar. I sing. And when I sing, I don't stutter at all. And in addition to social media, that is also another avenue of mine for self-expression. And no, I will not be singing right now, Meredith.
You're reading my mind, Joze. I'm going to toss it over to Aaron now to ask you a question.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the audience wants to know that, so you speak a lot of like amazing topic when it comes to EDII, and do you have any favorite book that you can recommend to the audience who wants to read more into it about what you're speaking of?
Absolutely. So I'd love to actually recommend two different TED Talks on the topic that are incredible. One of them is by Verna Myers, who is, I believe, the chief diversity officer at Netflix, and it's all about unconscious bias and racism. And it's such a powerful TED Talk that really focuses on how we have to replace these negative biases and expectations with new positive examples. And every time we give those opportunities for more representation, we are indirectly creating these scenarios where people can see themselves in the senior managers, in the CEOs, and in the senior leadership. It really, and even through media, if there's also a change in how people who are in specific identity groups are portrayed. So when I, for example, think about specifically people who stutter, in the media, the narrative had always been that the character who has a stutter is going to be shy and will have no personality, and definitely contributes to how you view yourself when the person who is supposed to represent you in the media is labeled in such a restrictive manner. And the second TED Talk is one by Daisy Dominguez, who I mentioned earlier, and it's called The Inclusion Revolution.
Super. Thank you, Jose. I just want to say to our audience, I'm mindful of time. We usually try to wrap by 1. We do have so many questions that we're going to go a little bit longer. Those of you who have to go, we won't be offended when we see your numbers drop away. You'll be getting this in the recording. We're going to take a few more minutes just to get to a few more of the questions, if that's okay. We have a question here about which I think is sort of interesting. This person writes, thank you for sharing your story. What advice or words of encouragement would you give your younger self if you could?
If I could go back in time, I would tell my younger self 3 things. 1, it's okay to be different. And I get emotional every time I say those words because of how long it took me to grasp this. And in fact, and let's do an exercise with the 240 people who are still here with us. If you think of yourself as being different, please write in the chat, I am different.
Fascinating. Here they come.
Yeah. And
yeah,
what's so interesting about this is quite often the topic of diversity and inclusion is seen at times as a polarizing or a threatening idea. But the truth is, when we talk about inclusion, it literally implies that every single person is part of that world that it is being created. So 1, it's okay to be different. 2, use fear as a compass. After hundreds of speaking engagements and comedy performances at companies, conferences, comedy clubs, I've learned bad news and good news about fear. The bad news is that that fear never goes away. The good news is that fear never goes away. If we know that something is constant, why on earth would we wait for it to miraculously disappear before we start taking action? And this reminds me of a quote by the Sufi poet Rumi. And it goes, "Why do you stay in prison? when the door is so wide open. And I will have to give a shout out. The person who shared that quote with me was right after I spoke to the masters of international business students and the masters of entrepreneurship at at Queens about a year and a half ago. One of the students came up to me after and told me that my philosophy is really aligned with one of her favorite quotes, and that's the quote that I I refer to now. And lastly, once you do that thing that you fear the most, do it again and again and again. It is not going to be an overnight transformation at all. It has to become a habit, the same way that everything else we do becomes habits.
Wonderful. Thank you. Erin, let's go over to you for one last question, and then we'll try to get things wrapped up so people can move on with their day. But Joze, we could keep you here all afternoon, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to go through the last question on the audience was asking was about, through your experience when you're interacting with the organizations, do you see the message of inclusion getting through the gatekeepers of the job opportunities, and what are the changes that you've been seeing happening in the corporate environments?
There are definitely changes, and it's been so heartwarming to work with HR professionals as a speaker and a trainer, and it's been really heartwarming to see that this topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion is genuinely being taken seriously at the moment. And especially through the different employee resource groups, the different affinity groups within each organization, as well as with the diversity and inclusion managers with whom I often work. I can feel the change in the priority that this cause has been given. The the good news, though, for any skeptics is that research has even shown that organizations with effective DEI policies and practices have been shown to have revenue higher, I think, by 19% in a lot of these studies I've come across. So this is really not just an activity of corporate social responsibility. It goes beyond that. It is really about unlocking the potential of every person at the organization or on campus.
I think I'm going to wrap things here because in the interest of time, and we do have to let people get on with their days, although, as I say, it's always great to keep people talking. So thanks so much, everybody, for attending today and for your enthusiasm for the topic. I have to do a little plug, as I always do, for some of the other things going on here at Smith. So I do want to let people know about opportunities for online learning through Queen's Executive Education. Coming up on May 25th, we have a half-day online program called Emotional Intelligence for Impact, which will teach how to leverage your EQ to resolve conflicts and improve workplace dynamics. So for more information, you can visit smithqueens.com/execed. All of the programs there at the moment are online and great to do in these days when we have time at our screens. So I hope everybody enjoyed today's webinar. I will tell you to keep your eyes on your inbox for a recording of this one and also for information about the next webinar. We've got lots of information too on the Smith Business Insight website. You can read lots of articles there about things related to business. To conclude today, Aaron, thank you so much for being an excellent co-host. It's been a pleasure having you here. And Joze, thank you for your incredibly inspiring presentation. As you'll see from the comments in the Q&A and also in the chat, people have really, really appreciated hearing your story. And I think you're sending us off into the pandemic world with a little more hope today. So thanks very much for that.
And thank you, Meredith and Aaron and the club. And of course, Queen's University. As a Queen's grad myself, it is particularly symbolic to have delivered this talk and shared these moments with you all today. So thank you, everyone, the attendees and all of the organizers as well.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day and take care.